Alright, let's run it back one more time. Let's talk about spoilers for Across the Spider-Verse, because there is a lot of great things to mention, to pull apart, to talk about. Starting off in a place that was completely unexpected, the ending, to be continued. To me, there was so many ways that they could have gone about it. There were so many ways that could have potentially gone wrong, but they stuck true to what they had envisioned, and the result that you get is something that is very emotionally fulfilling, but still leads perfectly into that third and final film, which releases in March of 2024. I think that length towards the final film was longer. People might have been a little bit more upset. Like, damn, we have to wait 3 to 5 years for the next film. But no, they worked on both of these films at the same time, so they're very close to being completed at the same time. Does that make sense? You have this beautiful chase sequence with Miles, Miguel, and all of these other spider people. And while it's kind of absurd in the grand scheme of things that Miles is able to outsmart, outwit, and outperform every single spider person, including Miguel, who's definitely the most proficient one there, on his heels, seeing it narrow itself down to this point, to this conflict, to this amalgamation of all of these things that the film thematically represents, is really gorgeous. After everything that Miles just went through in that chase sequence, he doesn't go to where he wants to be. He goes to the original dimension that his spider actually came from. And when you find out that Miles is the original anomaly, the narrative starts to reshape it around Miles' interpretation. To me, Miles is an anomaly on more than one front. With all of these spider people following Miguel and living their canon events, Miles wants to change his. He wants to take control of his fate, and it's a very powerful thing. So when he winds up in a place that is uncontrollable to him, it's like a big slap in the face. It's not something that you actually expect. You probably think about it within the moment, like, oh, what if he goes back to where the spider comes from? But you don't really know the ramifications of it until he meets his mother. And I really love how they pair this response with Gwen, with Miguel, and this split perspective that they all have. There's no Spider-Man here, so it seems like villainry and crimes in general are a lot more rampant. Especially with Miles getting knocked out on top of the buildings, you see a lot more flame and fire and things in chaos. So it's safe to say there's not really any decent or good type of heroes here. There definitely isn't a Spider-Man. I really enjoyed that approach. It makes for an uneasy experience leading into the conversation he has with his mother, and then seeing his uncle and that whole revelation finally coming out that this isn't his own dimension. It's really sad, however, when it does happen, because it's noticed by Gwen and it's noticed by Jess, who oversees Gwen disappear into another dimension. The moment where Miles reveals that he is Spider-Man to his mother is like game changing. It's like the biggest thing that has plagued him for the longest of times, and through his mind he's jumping through all of these equations and these ideas and what would change, what would be different, would they be disappointed? And even though his family is super supportive with what he does, it's still a massive thing to take into consideration that your son, that your child is a spider person. So it hits rather hard when the reveal does happen and Miles's mother doesn't know who Spider-Man is, doesn't really take him serious at all, and just brushes it to the side. Everything that Miles has been building up for 2 movies now, what has burdened him for about 1.5 years, has just been pushed to the side and gone off into the wind like it never existed to begin with. And that validation that he was seeking, that comfort, that support, cripples itself down into him further. Obviously, it's not the fault of Miles's mother or of Miles himself. It's just a reaction to the events of him becoming Spider-Man. I do love how that reveal, however, parallels Gwen's reveal to her father, showing how supportive he is and understanding, and the fact that finding out that his daughter was also a Spider-Man was life-altering. It changed him. He quit the police force. Theoretically, that was his canon event. Having that cleared right before Miles reveals himself, you kind of hope that the same treatment would happen. You kind of expect it, and it doesn't. This evidently steamrolls into seeing his uncle again, who obviously has passed away. Miles realizing that he's in the wrong dimension. Same with Gwen, same with Jess. And then that spiraling out of control. Because Spider-Man wasn't here, Miles never transforms. He goes down a different path. His father does actually die instead of his uncle, and Miles within this universe is very different because of it. The shocker, the twist, however, his uncle isn't Prowler. Miles is Prowler, and he wears it well. His attitude, his demeanor, his performance, everything is just there ready for these two to fight each other perfectly. It's kind of funny when you think about it, like all of these spider people and Miguel couldn't stop Miles, so who's gonna stop Miles? Himself, from a different dimension. when it comes to the demeanor of Prowler Miles, a lot more serious, potentially a lot more experienced, a lot more driven by rage and anger. He has lost his father, and that has clearly shifted a massive dynamic within this universe. So now we have three different parties. We have Prowler Miles and his uncle. We have Gwen's party that is trying to help their Miles. Of course, you have Miguel, Jess, and his group that are looking for Miles. Everyone is trying to get a piece of him in some way. Now, at least Gwen and her group have turned around. You have the original Peter from the first film coming in one last time, even though he has a child now. And it sets up this very uneasy battleground because all of this is webbed together by Spot. Spot has become a multi-dimensional versal being. He only cares about this Miles, no one else. He even showed a portion of different futures for Miles, and it seems like Spot may be on a level where he can write Miles' story for him, instead of living a fate or destiny that these canon events supposedly abide by. Spot, theoretically, being able to create his own or jump to different dimensions, should be able to wield them however he wants. That's a scary thing. He can create a future for Miles that is destructive, that is potentially worse than any canon event could have provided. Now, we don't know the semantics of Spot. We don't know if he can do that or how that's going to abide by the rules of canon events or the multiversal structure, whatever it may be, but there is something weird there. Obviously, you can see the war brewing, you can see the conflict, you can see them jumping through different dimensions. There's so many different interlocking pieces that it's going to be hard to balance them. So, who do we kill off? And before you think, oh well, canon events, no one should technically die, again, I think Spot is going to be that opener that makes things very unpredictable. That just his involvement to some degree rewrites everything. So you have Gwen of the chopping block, and originally I thought that was the biggest red flag, but right at the end they introduce a semi-retired Peter. He has a child now. He seems very happy, very joyful, and if there was one person that would just rip Miles apart, that would replace the canon event of his father dying, I think his mentor, the person that is kind of a pseudo-father figure to him as well, being Peter. It's a death I don't want to think about, but it is one of the saddest. The two other people on the chopping block, if you want to mention them, is of course Miles' father, but also Rio, his mother. I don't want to think about either of them dying, even though they are kind of the main cause of this whole conflict. I say cause, but more so the canon event that's meant to actually happen is towards Miles' father, but my fingers are crossed that they're safe. One thing that I don't think they're going to play on all too much, but I really hope that they do, is the love story between Gwen and Miles. It's there. They've done a lot within this film, and I think they should continue to grow upon it. Of course, Miles is in a position currently where he doesn't trust anyone, and Gwen has to work very hard to get that back. It's going to be saving his life type deal. I don't think there's going to be enough downtime to focus on the intimacy between these two, but with how aggressive Miles is becoming with changing his own destiny, it's a great thing. Writing his own story, so he's going to wield it within his own vision. This is a powerful identity-driven moment, and when he kind of explained it to his false mother from another dimension, you can assume that he can take the same steps again to reveal his feelings towards Gwen. Hell, Gwen might even beat him to it, to be honest. This is where they could be really sinister and build up this type of connection and romance again, finally rekindling their love, and then you have that major death flag come in for Gwen, getting her very close to death. That would be scary. The last thing that I do want to mention real quick is the multiverse, Spider-Verse stuff, right? The different dimensions. At this current time, I don't necessarily believe the canon events. I don't think they are as legitimate as Miguel makes them out to be, or at least they can be interpreted differently. This could be completely wrong because there's no real information to provide it, but theoretically, wouldn't Miles being bit from a spider from a different dimension in his universe technically make him an anomaly within his own universe? So wouldn't he start to glitch out? Now, they can actually explain this really well because the spider was glitching out, right? If something can be written, canon events may be able to change themselves. So it's not this event has to happen because it's destined to, but an event will happen and you can change it if you're strong enough and willed enough to do so. There may be a butterfly effect to it, meaning that something in response may happen, but it's not written within the stars. I think this is very much going to be one of the biggest ideas they may play on, especially when it comes to Spot. For someone like him to navigate different dimensions and show people their future, etc., it goes with this idea of unchangeable destiny, but Miles, quite literally being an anomaly, should be able to do it. Spot, for example, might be this big allegory for writing your own destiny in a really evil and malicious way. He was a byproduct of Spider-Man throwing a bagel, but he has taken his own form and charged down his own destiny to become this multi-dimensional being. Do you see what I mean? Spot, theoretically, has bypassed it completely. He's gone through different dimensions and just absorbed all of that power and has become someone that can do anything. He has written his own destiny. So I'm excited to see how they play against this. What can be morphed and changed around in a way that is applicable. There is a lot of things to balance, but I think they easily got it. Seeing all of these people collide and conflict and getting to a conclusion is going to be one hell of a journey, one hell of an experience. If you enjoyed, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. It supports me a lot, so thank you.